This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I want to welcome Terry Boucher to the show this morning.
Never man behind the curtain. That's me.
Man behind the glasses. You said you were going to tell me a Groucho Marx joke. Is it clean enough for the air?
Well, it was in 1953. He had a real pretty woman on his show called You Bet Your Life, a game show. And he asked her how she felt about sex. And she said, well, I like it infrequently. And he paused for a moment and he said, is that one word or two?
Well, I guess for the 1950s, that was kind of risque. That was a good joke. Well, we're starting back today. I just wanted to cover a little bit by... Oh, good morning, Nolan. How are you?
Oh, morning.
Good morning.
How was your week?
Great.
Good. We just got a good joke.
Oh, it's excellent.
I can, yes. What's that? Say that again.
He's breaking up. His voice was breaking up.
Right? Can you
like
hear us?
Voice pixelation.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can. Perfect.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
All right,
good.
we just finished off with a great joke from Terry, and we're going to move on now at this point to the presentation. I left off last week with some information from Moonlight, and that was the murder of Pat Tan, which we do have one listed on the Sandy Betts murder map that she claims the Zodiac had left behind for her. It does list Mount Tam, and it does show one victim. Doesn't really kind of fit in with what we're going to hear about from Moonlight, but it is consistent with what we know the Zodiac had taken credit for. So Moonlight said the victim, speaking by rope, was Pat Tan, 4/20/70, again predating the Halloween card of October 1970, which we're going to be getting to that anytime now. At the Mount Tamalpais, she was found having debris in her hair as though she was lying on the ground, appearing to be a staged suicide. She was found to be hanging by rope and an electrical cord, according to the web sources. There were at least 4 other hangings around this time period, one of which had all his clothes removed. She said, yeah, who thinks to remove their clothes before hanging themselves? The Air Force Base was, right? Well, I want people to find me naked. That's like
maybe a guy, but I don't know about other women.
You hope you never slip and fall in the bathtub, right, and kill yourself because somebody's gonna have to come in and take you out naked. Like, I don't see.
Yeah, that's right.
It says the Air Force Base was at the top of Mount Tam, so we have the military affiliation. On the other side of Mount Tam was the body of Leona Roberts, suspected 8th victim of the Zodiac Killer. Then there was the disappearance of the couple, Stephen Packard and Linda Lovell. One of Stephen's traveler's checks was cashed near the military naval base at Fort Bragg, 4 hours up the road. So again, another military reference. If we think back and we look like Texarkana Phantom murders and things like that, those all revolved around a military base. The lower stuff down in Southern California were all wrapped around the Vandenberg, right? Vandenberg Air Force Base. Is that the name of that? Anybody with me? Y'all freeze?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Y'all being too still. Can you like wave in the background or something? So yes, everything that we find, the Zodiac stuff in San Francisco, all revolving around the Presidio and Treasure Island and the VA hospitals, the Albany, New York stuff, all around the Albany Medical Center and VA Center. Everything seems to be like concentrated around something military. Then there was the disappearance of another couple. It was suspected they fell over the headlands into the ocean with their car left behind. And she says one falling over, but both. So yes, I mean, unless that person was trying to save the other person and went down with them, well, I can't think of a better way to go than with the person you love. But these are all very interesting murders or homicides to take a look at. I've not studied anything on the Stephen Packard or Linda Lovell. I don't know who she's referring to as this other couple or these other 3 hangings that occurred around Mount Tam. But on the murder map, it only lists 1. And I had kind of thought that we might have ruled Leona Roberts out as somebody that was possibly done by Philip Hughes, I think was his name. So I'm kind of back and forth on the fence as to whether or not Leona Roberts is actually a victim. Either way, let's move on. Oh, come on now.
I'm not.
You working? I'm not convinced, but he does say by rope, so we know we're looking for some victims by rope. The other thing is that we know that he's been tying his victims with rope. So that may be his reference to rope. Not even hanging them,
right? All the little pieces of rope, according to Dennis. So,
yeah, you know, I think we looked at it back.
The use of the rope, not necessarily hanging.
I'm trying to go back really quick. Oh, right here. Here's a picture we looked at last week of Jack's belongings that was in this military green file box with this Tupperware inside of it. Inside the Tupperware were keys that we located back to Michigan. I'm not sure that we made an identification on the one here to the right, but right here in a baggie, you can see this cord, these less than 3 feet pieces of cord that were contained inside this container, along with earrings, 1 of each earring, never a double, the knife that Dennis believed was used in Sherry Joe Bates, and the pilot pen that we believe was used in the Zodiac letters.
And the tip is missing from the knife too. Which
exactly. It's broken and it's broken and bent. Exactly.
Yep.
And so that
I used to be a. What's that?
The cord is like clothesline cord, is that correct? More than like rope. The cord, it's like clothesline cord, right?
Some was, and some was a braided rope. I think it all could be used for clotheslines. I know that typically it was a plastic
rope. Yeah.
Right. Well, his son wrote a letter to Stephen Dewhurst when he was writing his book, and he stated that his dad carried pieces of pre-cut rope, less than 3 feet, nothing that you could use to tie something down with, but he always had it in the trunk of his car.
As you do.
As I do? I don't.
As a joke. I mean, as a normal person would do, right? Nah.
Right.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that?
I don't know what 3 feet sections are good for by any means. All right. So that brings us to one of my favorite cards. And I have been contemplating this one being my next new tattoo because I just love the greeting card. And it says, "Sorry to hear your ass is a dragon." It's the dragon card from April 28th, 1970. He says, "I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast." So obviously he's still alluding to I'm going to be blowing something up. And he says, "P.S. on back." So obviously he's written a message on the back of this greeting card. And if you guys can't see this and you're hearing this by radio, there's a gold panner on a burrow. And we have what looks like another gold panner on the dragon. And so it must obviously be the gold panner talking to the gold panner on the dragon saying, "Sorry to hear your ass is a dragon."
A jackass too.
A jackass. No, yes, exactly.
Jack on a jackass, nonetheless.
A one-eyed, what do you mean a one-eyed jack?
Well, you would call that little prospector guy, or sometimes they would call those kind of guys one-eyed jack, that they're like a TV movie type of character, a one-eyed jack. There's a movie called The One-Eyed Jacks. And
gotcha.
And that little jackass there, so that's why I say all of those type of cards had a Jack hint on them. One more or one Jack.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't. Well,
Yeah.
and we know that at this particular point in time, Jack was said to have been, he's claimed to have been gold panning and then taking that gold to Nevada and selling it. Dennis thinks that what he really was doing was stealing from people and then taking and selling that in Nevada for money, which I don't know what he was doing, but he claimed to be gold panning. And this card is the era that Jack had been claiming to do that gold panning.
Yeah.
So it has an interesting message, and I'm not sure where it comes from. It's like I said, there's a lot of things that the Zodiac talks about, which makes absolutely no sense why he's going on these tangents, unless there is some message he's attempting to get somewhere, because some of the stuff just doesn't make any sense. He says, if you don't want me to have this blast, you must do two things. Tell everyone about the bus bomb with all the details. I would like to see some nice Zodiac buttons wandering about town. Everyone else has these buttons like the peace button, Black Power, Melvin Eats Blubber, etc. Well, it would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button. Please, no nasty ones like Melvin's. Thank you.
Well, he's keywording those, Nanette. He's keywording those. Look at, he spells buttons one time with one T and then the next time with two T's. Blubber,
And then back to one T. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
B in this case, but normally two B's. And then there's a little symbol before Black Powder there. That's maybe one of the things that Harriet was talking about on one of her solves, that symbol. Look at that.
I think it's the peace sign. If you think about what's going on back in those days, right?
It's kind of a convolution.
Hippies,
The V is to the
peace.
right
I think
a
it
little
is the
bit.
peace sign.
Yeah.
So it resembles a peace sign.
Yeah.
But look at how it's specifically drawn with the V portion over to the right a little bit. You know, it's
Right.
Yeah, it's another cryptogram of some sort. That's for sure.
Well,
It's
he
loaded
alludes
with
to,
that
just
stuff.
like many of his other messages that we've heard so far, he alludes to fun. He wants to tell everyone. He wants everybody to know what he's up to. He is using hyphenated words with no hyphen. Again, strictly in line with what we know as the Zodiac Killer and Jack's writing.
Yeah.
We have the double letter spelling errors, as Terry just printed out. We have the splitting of the words like the word considerably. So he wrote the word consider and then space BLY. Again, you said that might be a clue as to where some message might start or end, right?
Well, that's kind of what we're wondering, you know, and Harriet's done some pretty good work on that, I think. You know,
Right.
with that regard, she's on into that direction of looking at things that way, and that's good, I think, because she's found some interesting things.
Yeah. And he also had, let me see if I can find it real quick. I want to see
Same with
where
Zodiac. The Zodiac is almost not hyphenated, but look at the separation
He seems
there.
to be going out of his way to use B words.
right.
Yep. And notice how
There's lots of
ZOD
B
and then
words.
IA, yeah, ZOD and then
Blast,
separate
blubber,
IAC.
bomb, bust.
Black Power, blubber.
Button.
Yeah, and Zodiac, Zod, IAC. I mean, he does that.
And he
So
spells
often.
blubber
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah.
Breaking of the words.
Yeah.
Also the reduction in the INGs. So when we follow the
Yeah.
messages by the
Right.
Zodiac, you will find that the beginning of the word is always much larger than what I call the reducing ING. And that's because it gets smaller and smaller as it winds down and closes out the word. And that's definitely consistent with the way Jack writes and with the Zodiac communications. He's also making fun of the...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it does make you wonder if the word infrequently is one word or two, right?
You just had to. I'll tell you about that later, Nolan. He told a Groucho Mark joke earlier. Making fun of the cops, which we know is something he loves to do, and extorting the public to wear buttons and tell about the bomb that is non-existent. So he just really wants to instill more fear, and he wants to see that it's being made on the front page. So again, what is this persistency for wanting to make the front page, wanting people to know? Again, I think that is definitely just an agenda to get his message into the paper so that someone he knows can see what it is that he's up to. Now, I did find that the dragon card was,
Ownership.
where did I? Okay, maybe I didn't put
I
that
think
piece on there.
he's asserting ownership by doing that too, of course.
It's what?
He's asserting ownership of the the documents by doing things like that. He's saying, this is my document, and he'll mark the things, you know.
What did you say, Nolan? You held something up and I missed it.
It was a picture of Groucho Marx. I have an album by the Marx.
Right. And that's what the joke was about this morning that I told her it was actually about Groucho Marx. You've heard that joke, haven't you?
Oh, tell him. Go ahead and tell him again so we can stop.
He had his old show, You Bet Your Life, and he had this real good-looking gal on there, and he finally asked her how she felt about sex, and she says, well, I like it infrequently, and he waited a little bit, and he said, is that one word or two? He's a clever guy.
Yeah.
He's a clever guy.
All right, so now I wanted to do a small comparison because again, we still have this letter from the Zodiac in 1978, which they're trying to question or state that it was not. So we see that the FBI says DNA sample obtained, not authentic Zodiac letter, which made me giggle because when I started to look at some of the consistencies in comparison to this particular greeting card, we see that the handwriting itself is very, very similar. Even the way the Zodiac and all of the stuff is spelled. Look at the C right here in this Zodiac and look at the C in that Zodiac. I mean, come on, you guys. It's definitely the same person. We've got even we've got the pointed W's. We also have the rounded W's. If you go up here, you'll find rounded. Here's your rounded ones, and here's your. I attempted to make them look differently by making them skinny and pointy. And when you come over here, you find the same thing. So we've got W's that are pointed and skinny. We have rounded W's as well. So everything is consistent. This is absolutely 100% a communication by the Zodiac.
One thing out about the three of us that's different. You, myself, and Harriet, we have come to realize that Jack Torrance was the guy via separate pathways. I mean, I learned about it first from you and from Harriet, but I took a different pathway. I'm not a handwriting expert. I'm not a code breaking expert like she is. So you know what I'm saying? So there's three pathways that are supporting this idea and showing the evidence. You know what I'm saying? It's on a serious note.
Absolutely.
Look at the K and speaking up there, gigantic. I've been harping on that lately a lot. I know I'm running long on it, but that K and speaking is gigantic on this particular topic.
And that's from 78. So that's 2 years after
78.
King. Yeah, that's 2 years after King. So again, that connection.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So I went then even one step further and I brought in the other letter from 1978. I also found a section in the map coupled with this code, which is another letter we're going to be coming up on in comparison to. So we look at the way well is spelled and we start to see all these tall L's that are being used separately from the communication. And then we look over here, we see the same thing, very tall, skinny, close L's. Everything is consistent as well with this particular communication, and they cross-reference with the communication that we're discussing right now that has been attributed to the Zodiac Killer. So it's a little unclear to me as to why they ruled these ones not authentic, other than I think they wanted to stop having to show the public what the Zodiac was saying because his numbers kept going up and they still weren't catching him.
Sure. You know what, Nanette, that's an astute observation that you made. That gigantic K like that is post OCCK, as we'll get to that eventually. That's an astute observation. I thank you for that.
It's coming in 6 years. We're almost there.
6 years. Oh. Okay.
Our 6 years will be like dog years. It'll be like dog years. We'll be to it probably in the next couple months.
I'll feel like dog years.
I also wanted to point out once again, here we have a version of the envelope for that greeting card that's found in the FOIA files from the FBI. And then this is what you would find on Tom Voigt's his website. Go back. You can see how the condensing of this particular scan has changed the looks of the letters.
So Tom Voight
completely
tampered with that, then you're saying, or his copy?
No, this is Tom Voigt's, and this is probably a true scan. This is what you're going to find. If anybody wants to research this case now by going through the FBI's FOIA files, all you're going to find is distorted and altered versions of these letters, which have literally changed the balance or the shape of these letters based on the way they've distorted it.
altering the Ramsey murder note now for going on constantly.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So, but we also have an address construction, which we've talked about throughout, which is the city with the state without a comma that is used. Sometimes he uses a comma, sometimes he doesn't. But again, it falls in line with how we have been watching the Zodiac postage things with 2 stamps using the Eisenhower stamp. And then, of course, the way that he actually addresses the envelope, not completely, but he knows it's going to get to where it needs to go to. I feel like the Blacklist, with them calling their home base the post office, that this is kind of a spinoff of how they're capable of getting communications around without doing it properly.
Although, you look at that, now you wonder if both of those weren't tampered with. The more you start looking at them carefully, though, and that, because I mean, okay, the postage markings look normal on the left, but then
it's full size, it's full regular.
They don't look the same. I don't know.
Exactly. Yes, because they've shrunk and condensed the actual scan or the scanning process. There's a ton of them. Okay. But what I can say is that this is more accepted as a envelope size, which is seen. I mean, obviously the heads aren't condensed on the stamps. They look normal size. You don't see any distortion in the actual circle here. But when you get over here, you start to see that thinned out distortion where things were made like they condensed it down.
On a vertical and a horizontal axis distortion.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So that brings us to
from a rectangle.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. And that changed the entire appearance of the handwriting. If somebody wanted to do an examination on that or research this themselves, it would literally prevent somebody from making an identification because those things are so different. That brings us to June 19th, 1970. SFPD Officer Sergeant Richard P. Raditich was shot with a .38 caliber gun at 643 Waller Street. At 5:25 a.m., he was shot 3 times with that .38 caliber revolver at point blank range through the drive side window of his vehicle while he was writing a parking ticket. Just like J.D. Tippit in the JFK case was shot sitting in his parked patrol car. JFK and RFK, we have Stuart Mayer, Paul Stein, Charles Jarman, and lo and behold, we're going to see another individual, another cab driver here next that was also shot. I want to point something out about J.D. Tippit.
Technically, he was actually shot in front of his car. He jumped out of his car and then was shot.
Yeah, he was outside of the car.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, he was in front of. There's a lot of controversy about and a lot of disparity about the Tippit case from what I've been reading. It's like it's all over the map. But yeah, he was shot outside. But 3 times, bang, 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 and then shot to kill. You get into that, and there's like 2 Oswalds or 1 Oswald, and there's so many rabbit holes in that.
2 Oswalds.
2 Oswalds.
2 Oswalds.
There's some evidence to support 2 Oswalds. Yeah, there's evidence to support.
I read a bunch of stuff on it.
Okay.
And Tippit evidently knew the person that shot him. That's why the guy got the drop on him, because Tippit knew him. And Tippit may or may not have been involved in the overall situation, but nobody's figured out why he was killed.
Right.
And,
he was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and all of a sudden he got his head cut off. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fishy.
He was behaving strangely that day.
Oh yeah.
And he is the doppelganger for JFK, if you will. So if there was a body swap to be had, you look at that man and he is extremely consistent to some degrees. And I think that there was information that suggests that JFK's wife had made a statement after seeing her husband on a gurney saying that it doesn't even look like my husband. And I'm not meaning that because his head was blown off, but because the body style, the body shape, there's a lot of reasons. She would know. Exactly.
She would know. Yeah, that's interesting too.
Crazy. Yeah. Anyways, let's read what they have to say about this particular shooting. It says, enclosed herewith for the Bureau is 1 photocopy and 1 Xerox copy, which includes a letter, map, and envelope of the latest letter received in caption matter. Also enclosed for Sacramento was one Xerox copy of same letter. The enclosures were furnished to San Francisco office on 6/30/70 by Inspector, I'm not sure, Homicide Detail, San Francisco Police Department. The inspector advised that the letter and map were enclosed in the envelope, which was addressed to the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco, California, postmarked San Francisco on June 26, 1970. They were furnished to the SFPD by the San Francisco Chronicle. For the information of the Bureau, and Sacramento SFPD officer Raditich was shot to death by an unknown person as he sat in his police car alone on 6/19/70. At this time, the murder of this police officer is not attributed to unsub in this case, but the unsub is armed and dangerous. But they made a request to the lab. The FBI lab is requested to compare the enclosures with previous submissions attributed to the unsub in this matter and to attempt to decipher the coded message at the end of this letter. And we are going to go.
I have one footnote for you there to add to that.
Yes.
The name Radicek comes up in the D.B. Cooper case, if you check with Bruce Smith. I forget what it was. Yeah, I mean, he was not a victim, but he was someone that was like an official.
Huh.
Yeah, like an FBI official, the Radicek. Just as a coincidence, or maybe just a coincidence, I don't know. But that name came up, and I'd never heard of it.
This is Raditich.
Yeah, I'm probably not hearing it, and unfortunately, the Talk 4 TV thing logo is over the top of it right now, so I can't see it. I'm not saying it's exactly the same name. I'm just saying that rang a bell with me, and I've never heard that, how many syllables are in that word,
Gotcha. Well, that brings us to a murder that occurred one day before the letter. So we have this police officer that shot before the letter. We have this cab driver now on June 25th, 1970, Larry Hargis, taxi cab driver, downtown San Diego. His body was found in a field near Galapagos Street. Car was found in downtown San Diego. This has been some of the running themes of some of the victims in the Southern California area, that they are dropped and dead in one place and their vehicle is found miles away somewhere else. Wow. So the car was found, and I've mapped it out here to show people where it occurred. It's approximately 13 miles from where the body was dumped to where the car was found. So he basically got himself back over to the military area, San Diego, right? Taking himself out of whatever this area is and back over to where the military base would be.
Right.
He said they said he was shot in the head once. So again, this takes us back to some of these murders that we've already taken a look at. I wasn't able to find what caliber of a gun he was shot with to make that confirmation, but I did put in here that I need to research and see if I can come across anything that would indicate what caliber of gun that Hargis was shot with. And if it was a 38, this may be the person we're looking at, and it coincides with the running theme of murdered taxi people.
Right. Seems to be 9mm and 38 were his favorite choices.
Do you have a picture of Paul Stein to compare with Hargis? To me, just at first glance, they look similar.
Yeah,
I know, right?
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you first saw the picture before reading the name, I thought it was Paul Stein.
Big yellow cab, but yeah, it kind of just jumps out, doesn't it?
Right. And so then you have that message that comes out. I shot a man in a parked car with a 38. He's getting this message into the newspaper. So if he is responsible for handling another yellow cab murder, he's getting the information he needs to the mob or whoever else is involved with that particular crime or setting him up.
I wonder if that wasn't downplayed by the media at the time, because, they feed the public this story about the Zodiac, but how come you never hear about this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to find him in the midst
together.
Exactly. Well, I did find an article on it, so maybe I just answered my question on this. So it is interesting to hear some people talk about what they believe Zodiac Jack was capable of pulling off, like the article we're going to read here below. But I want to remind everyone that the FBI believed very much so that the Zodiac predicted his crimes. They're very planned and well thought out in advance. And in many of his communications, he's talking about what he's going to do and hasn't done yet. So the article that I found said so 6/19, let me see. So June 19th. So no, that 38, this is back to Raditich. The murder took place the day before the button letter was received at San Francisco Chronicle on the 26th, June 1970, claiming he had shot a man sitting in a parked car with a 38. but the location in San Diego and the traveling distance back to San Francisco makes any connection to the button letter, as well as the Zodiac Killer, unlikely, they said, but nevertheless provides a significant timeline between the murder of Larry Hargis and the mailing of the button letter to the San Francisco Chronicle the following day. Any information regarding either of these cases, please contact San Diego Homicide Detail by visiting their website below. Another case predating the Los Angeles letter on March 13th, 1971 was that of Larry Hargis, the guy we just talked about, a 27-year-old yellow cab driver murdered on June 25th, 1970, just over 8 months after the callous slaying of Paul Stein, gunned down by a single shot to his head in Presidio Heights on October 11th of 1969. Larry Hargis had informed the taxi company dispatcher of a client asking to be driven to the Spring Valley area from downtown San Diego, California. San Diego is situated near the coast in Southern California, about 2-hour drive south of Los Angeles and Riverside County, but only a 30 minutes drive from the crime scene of Nikki Benedict in Poway. And I believe that Nikki Benedict is likely a victim of the Zodiac. The words to the dispatcher in the early hours of the 25th of June, unfortunately, were the last spoken by taxi driver Larry Hargis. His body was later discovered in a field near Galapagos Street. He had been shot and his wallet had been taken. His cab, presumably commandeered by the murderers, was later discovered abandoned in downtown San Diego, approximately 20 minutes traveling time from the murder scene. No suspect or suspects have ever been identified, and the case remains unsolved to this day. So, like I said, I do believe that Nikki Benedict is a victim. The next communication with the Mount Diablo Map letter was mailed the day after Hargis's crime and stated that the Zodiac had shot a man in a parked car with a .38. And that brings us to that communication. This is a suspected Zodiac correspondence. It has been confirmed. They did find DNA. They found cells. So we know that this is definite. And what cells? Are these cells matching other cells, which is their confirming notion? We know that Jack used other people's spit to seal his envelopes. So the chance of there being additional samples of DNA involved in these letters is highly probable. This one was actually postmarked June 26, 1970, the Mount Diablo Map, and another code, which I refer to as the Z32. This particular communication, the map itself said that is to be set to mag north. When I did my research for this time period in 1970, mag north was approximately 17 degrees north. So we were on some type of a kick at some point in time talking about the degrees of longitude and latitude and where they lined up. And I believe it was Harriet that said the -12 equals 78 degrees longitude or Tahoe, and the 38 degrees longitude is San Jose, Santa Clara area. So she is actually finding that some of these notions, so that -12 up here actually would put him at 78 degrees longitude or in Tahoe, which is where we believe Jack is moving to at this point. And then, of course, the 38 being another reference to San Jose, Santa Clara area, which is where Jack is leaving and going from. This letter says, this is the Zodiac speaking. I have become very upset with the people of San Fran Bay area. They have not complied with my wishes for them to wear some nice buttons. I promised to punish them if they did not comply by annihilating a full school bus. But now school is out for the summer, so I punished them in another way. I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38. And he writes Zodiac 12, SFPD 0. So we've always taken the notion that this was an inclination to how many people he has killed. So this is him accepting 12, though I think the 12th victim card was supposed to be in reference to the missing victim, Donna Lass, and we haven't gotten there yet. So he's already announcing 12 before that 12th Sierra card victim comes out. He says, the map coupled with this code will tell you where the bomb is set. You have until next fall to dig it up. And he writes a code. So again, this is 32 letters or 32 symbols. He has now added new symbols that he has not used in any other previous ciphers or codes. So we're seeing something new, which means he's switching it up a little bit. Again, you only see that happen by somebody who is actively the person that is doing it. If somebody was to try and copycat, they would literally try to do it exactly the same because they want it to be believed that it is that person. You wouldn't see offshoots or additions or new things that would confuse people. The goal behind a forger is to make it appear as though it fits as well as possible. So adding new symbols would tell me that, yes, this is another confirmed communication. Now, we do have double letters. What's that?
I was going to tell you, Groucho Marx line. I shot a man in my pajama. I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I'll never know. I read that line. I shot a man. So you shoot a man that was sitting in a car that was holding onto a 38, or that's the point.
Right. Well, it says that
sentence structure.
I do have in this letter. We also have the double letter spelling errors, the spelled incorrect words. He's upset no one is wearing his buttons, and he took it out on a man in a parked car with a 38. I'm guessing Hargis, Ratatich, who knows. The map with this code tells you where the bomb is. Claims that there are 12 victims. Threat of time limit to dig up the bomb. He sends us the Mount Diablo map, so we now have our first reference to his almost his radian theory before he actually instructs us to look at it from a radian version. Instructions to set compass at magnetic north is on the map, and he numbered the zodiac symbol like a watch. So the time reference, the Black Dahlia, Sherry Joe Bates, and Riverside Phantom, and all the others, we can see that he has referenced this particular zodiac symbol on the map at 0, 3, 6, and 9, the markers for o'clock.
Right.
All right. So that brings me to a version that Dennis, go ahead.
You know how that works, don't you? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, that we know Ratatich was killed with a 38, but we don't know what type of weapon killed Hargis.
Correct.
It was a pistol, but we don't know what kind.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
I forgot what I was
So that brings me to one of my biggest conspiracy theories is the changing and altering of the letters to diminish or get rid of items of identification or things actually left behind by the author, which I suggest happens with everybody who attempts to manipulate their handwriting. They will accidentally drop these clues at some point in time. Now, Dennis came to me with a version of this particular letter right here, and we can see clearly that what they're portraying to us on Tom Voigt's site and on the internet is this nice, clean version. Obviously, it looks like it's been through some chemical treating or some chemical testing. But we don't see anything in regards to this area that looks like there's any type of issues with it. Everything is clean and clear. Dennis showed me a version where there were these dot marks that were portrayed. There are what appears to be these dripping blood marks, which are consistent. And we have this different letter A that was inside the book. I know this is a little hard to read here, but I've blown it up on the next one. So I wanted to compare that to Graysmith's version in his book. So this is basically what Dennis had showed me. And we see that little dot up there? And how it's drugged down like one of those blood dripping marks that we often see the Zodiac portray. The heavy period marking is something that we definitely know that the Zodiac did. I wasn't sure if this was something that bled through from the backside that was on the other side we haven't seen, or if this was actually dot marks placed in here on purpose by the Zodiac. But there was also an additional, so there were missing right here these 3 streaks that you can see over here.
Yeah.
So this is what's in Graysmith's book. This is what Dennis had pulled from the internet previous to 2001.
Which one is which now?
This one to the left is the one Dennis pulled previous to 2001. This is the one that's in his book. This one is in Graysmith's book. So it has all the same attributes that Dennis has. And yet we have these 3 streak marks right here, or 4. You can see them across the slashes. So
one point I want to make.
Hold on. I have 2 versions of hold on. I have 2 versions of the Phillips 66 letter, which shows some interesting characteristics no longer found in the letter that's online or the color versions that are being purported by Tom Voight. I and Dennis believe it has been altered. Dennis spoke to Robert Graysmith, who presented this letter in his first Zodiac book, which is the version to the right here. Then in his second book, the item circled in red went away, and there is no sign of it on the color scan versions of Voight's that Voight portrays. Smith claimed that it was a printing error. Now, if it was a printing error, we would find those printing issues on every single page. If there is a damage to a drum that would cause an error to occur in a printing process, it is going to happen in the same place, because you got to remember the thing's rolling, or at least in that same area on every single page that was printed, until they had figured out that the drum had been damaged. So he claims that this is some type of a printing error, so that when he went ahead and reintroduced it in his next book and it was missing, this is the version that we got in his book. The one that's being portrayed by Tom Voigt. Now take a look at those A's. There's that bell top A. This is my consideration for it. There was a bell top A in the word annihilating, and in order to get rid of it, they had to clean up.
Modified.
Yep, they had to clean up everything else about it. Now you can also see that they've then changed certain elements of the letters. So like this H right here that has this heavy overhang and curvature, which is something that has been consistent with some of the Zodiac writings, that's completely gone now. It's been shortened and condensed. So I find
who's now again? Clarify that for me, please.
This one is Dennis's. This is Tom Voigt's.
Oh wow!
Right.
I only one note to make when you're ready. But go ahead.
Go for it.
Well, that's simply to notice that the word "not" is underlined. Heavily underlined, sitting right over the word "for." I think you're going to eventually see there's a great significance to that. If you were
that not modifiers you were saying, where he's
not modifiers, we can go into explanation of that at another point in time. But that's like saying "not," and technically it's saying "not." That's like saying cancel the word "not," or your doubles. It's however you want to look at that. But I'm just saying that stands out. And that's going to be something that's going to stand out when we get to the Ramsey murder note, because he really played the not modifiers on that.
Well, I had an IT guy take a look at this letter, and he said that this letter, this one and the Melvin Belli letter, that they had been blown up. So basically they had changed the pixel width, which changed the height and width of the letters, and they increased it to 1,000%. So the document is now being presented as an 8.5 by 11 instead of the 5 by 7 that it originally was. If you take and try to print this letter, it will come out in an 8.5 by 11 size, which is not consistent with it. Sure. Right. So I took this letter and I actually rescanned it back into my computer. So I printed it off of Voigt's website. Or I printed it off the version my mentor had given me when he gave those blown up, and he knew that these weren't the right size of these letters, and he attempted to use it against me when I wanted to release an opinion as identification. But I took this letter and I scanned it back into my computer, and once I did that, it picked up the image in the way it had been originally formed, and it spit it back out of my printer as a 5 by 7. I nearly fell out of my chair. I had goosebumps all over my body. I thought, how the heck? I didn't even know that it was a 5 by 7 until I spoke with Terrence Pascal. So when I came home immediately after speaking with Terrence Pascal, and I think I was just scanning it back in just to get it into the system and work off of it, and it populated itself as a 5 by 7. I was floored. It confirmed what Terrence Pascal said.
There's a lot of definition to that one on Dennis' copy too. A lot of definition,
right?
A lot of fine definition.
What was that, Nolan?
It's a smart computer.
Yeah, smart computer.
So here's another letter that we're going to get later in 1974. But here is again those heavy random period dots and blood dripping dots, which are consistent with what we're seeing going on here. So yes, he places them randomly for no apparent reason in different communications, but we see it as a consistent common denominator in these.
Look at the humiliation on Jack's face while he's dancing with a woman. He's like, I gotta dance with all these things. Oh my god!
Evidently, this is Jack.
Downturned mouth and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dance.
But now we can see clearer that letter A. That definitely has more shape and form in it. There seems to be no other trash mark or anything else around it, but they chose to clean that up and turn it into that A that we saw that was more like this one right here. When you can see that there's nothing about this A that looks, let me go back here. There's nothing about this A that looks consistent with this A. It just blows my mind. And that said, yeah, that they said they called it. I think they changed it on purpose.
I think they changed on purpose. You're absolutely right. That's good evidence. Very good evidence.
Now, I brought that up with the 2001 Vowinovich letter. Look at the A's that are being used here in comparison to that A.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, it's the same person. That's all there is to it. Sure. It's funny because Moonlight
is badly misspelled.
What's that?
Annihilating?
Annihilating is badly misspelled.
Yeah, very,
not even supposed to be an A there, and there should be
intentional too, because we know we knew it.
Yeah,
he proved he could spell. Yeah. If he didn't know how to spell, he looked it up.
Yeah. So anyways, another attempt at Moonlight to, cram some things down my throat that she doesn't seem to already realize I've already heavily talked about is this letter from 2001. So she sends me an email making reference to these letters, albeit she has some of the best images that I've seen of this particular letter so far. But she isn't telling me something I haven't already discovered and haven't already completed a handwriting examination on. And she's saying that it's Jack all day long. Well, thank you for the confirmation. But yes, we've been there, done that. That brings us to an all agencies in agreement that Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, Vallejo, and Riverside murders were committed by the same person. So another FOIA file that says, for information of the Los Angeles office commencing in August 1969, an individual who has written several letters to the newspapers in Northern California, some of which contain cryptographic messages, and who signs himself Zodiac, had been suspect in at least 6 unsolved murders in California. Because of some of the details contained in his letters pertaining to the murders, details not known to the general public, the 8 police agencies which investigated the cases have come to the confirmed conclusion that the Zodiac is responsible. The murders for which the Zodiac has taken credit are as follows: Riverside, California; Vallejo, California, 2; Vallejo, California, 1; Lake Berryessa, 1; San Francisco, 1. All but the Riverside, California crimes occurred in the Sacramento and San Francisco division. The Sacramento division, this is bringing us right on into these murders we're going to start seeing. We've already saw one nurse murdered in the Sacramento area as Jack is moving more towards South Lake Tahoe. It says the Sacramento and San Francisco divisions have, since 1969, on a selective basis, requested examinations by the FBI laboratory and FBI identification divisions pursuant to requests from the Vallejo, California Police Department, Solano County, California Sheriff's Office, San Francisco PD, and Napa County, California. So all of these police agencies have had jurisdiction in murders committed by the Zodiac in their areas. As a result, the FBI laboratory has on file several samples of handprinting and writing prepared by the Zodiac, which samples were furnished by the above police agencies. The FBI Identification Division Latent Fingerprint Section has on file some latent prints developed from questioned documents and other sources and made available by the above police agencies. Some or all of these latent prints may belong to the Zodiac. For a period of approximately 3 years, no correspondence had been received from the Zodiac. However, on 1/29/74, a letter was received by a San Francisco newspaper believed to have been prepared by the Zodiac. The San Francisco office is in the process of obtaining a copy of this letter and any latent fingerprints developed on it for submission to the FBI Laboratory and Identification Division. So I think that's pretty strong evidence that they are including Sherry Jo Bates.
Absolutely.
Why is Los Angeles on there? We don't know of any Zodiac murders in LA.
Riverside, I think, could probably be the only.
Riverside's a different county. It's a different. So maybe it's that jurisdiction. But didn't Zodiac write a letter to the LA Times?
Yes, and that's when yes, exactly. He wrote it to the LA Times in regards to them finding his Riverside activity. Absolutely correct. Yeah. We are down to about a minute.
To other Southern California killings as well.
Exactly. He said there was a lot more down there they hadn't found yet. So yes, we are dealing with somebody who has committed more crimes than he's admitted. And I think that we're going to see all of those crimes come about. Most of the LA ones we've already heard. We're now in the Northern California area. If he commits any other murders, now I'm going to find them in other states and other places. When he moves, wherever he goes to, Jack has the proximity and happens to be right there within the availability of committing these crimes. Well, that pretty much is about all I have, unless you guys have something you can add today. We are down to, that's it, our last minute.
I predicted the earthquake earlier this week. I told my mom it was earthquake weather, and then 5 minutes later, I got an alert on my phone. And then 5 minutes after that, it came out there was an earthquake in the Delta.
Very good. As long as it's not a big one.
All right, Terry. We got to get
this
going.
This goes to show you that there were honorable people working for the FBI, because this is an honorable and honest document that you found. You know, it's a good. This shows some of those people are doing their job. You know. But
all right. I really.
Job?
Yeah, they were at one point. I appreciate you guys. It's been fun today. I thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next Friday. Take care.
See you, kids.
Bye.
Bye.